You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly Requa, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. Bark and Wag is dedicated to protecting our dogs through advocacy, education, and supporting like-minded dog lovers by selling custom pet products. Bark and Wag is excited to announce our new partnership with a Colorado hemp farm to produce a line of CBD products for your pets. Bark and Wag has CBD pet tincture available in 300, 750, 1200, and 2400 milligrams. Bark and Wag CBD is pet safe, no THC, it's made in the USA, and is CO2 extracted. Please check out Bark and Wag's website, barkandwag.com. That is BARK, to see our line of CBD and awesome merchandise. We love pooch ideas for podcasts and merchandise, so anytime send an email to Polly at barkandwag.com with your suggestions.
Welcome to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly Requa. Today we're talking to Cristi, owner of Natural Pet Wellness. Welcome, Cristi.
Hi, Polly. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask you a question that a listener brought up on what are the insights into pet sitting from the pet sitter's perspective and how to prepare?
Yes, we all love our pets. And when we leave, especially after COVID, it's very hard for a lot of my clients to leave their dogs or their cat. And when they do leave, their animals have weird reactions. Maybe they don't eat, or maybe they hide, or maybe they mope around, and that breaks our heart. We want our animals to be happy, and we don't want any of that guilt of us being able to leave and enjoy ourselves on a little vacation. So pet sitting is very important. And finding the right pet sitter is going to make or break your vacation.
Right.
I think the first thing is we want of situations to avoid. And a lot of these situations owners don't think about sometimes, or maybe they've heard the horror stories. Like you can look up anything about like Rover or other big pet sitting groups that people have lost dogs, like dogs run away, or there's horrible stories. And just in my own personal life, like I've hired pet sitters for my own animals, and the communication or the lack of maturity of some pet owner or pet sitters, it caused my animals to be to have stress. I used to have a blind dog, and I told the pet sitter that he had to leave the dog doors open because our blind dog knew how to get through the dog door to go out to potty. He closed the dog doors and then he left, and our dog had to poop in the house and was really upset about it. Our dog was very upset about that because he couldn't get out the door. And it's like I told him, I showed him, I texted him, like he had all that information and he still didn't follow it. And I've had other owners tell me they've had pet sitters that throw a party while they're there, or they actually don't spend the night when they said they're going to. So a lot of those things that happen, it's from miscommunication and also expectations, because you want to make sure that your animal is getting cared for exactly how you want them cared for. And I think one thing is clear communication. So when you hire a pet sitter, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Like, this is not a vacation for them. And a lot of people think that, pet sitting, you get to hang out with the dog and watch TV all day and not do anything. A true pet sitter, they take it as a job and a very serious one. It's your most prized possessions. It's your home, for one. If they're pet sitting in your home, that's your biggest investment. And then they're also pet sitting your family member. And that's also, something very near and dear to your heart that is irreplaceable. And it's not always a job you want to give to the kid next door. because you're not going to get the care quality or the experience of somebody that is a professional pet sitter that knows how to happen when your smoke detector alarms go off at 3 o'clock in the morning, or when there's a smell of gas in the house, and what do they need to do to take those steps? Or your basement is flooding. How are they going to address that situation? Or your dog gets into the pantry and eats things they're not supposed to. A 15-year-old kid isn't going to necessarily be comfortable and understand how to take care of those situations.
So everything that you've talked about, I've had pet sitters that has happened. So when Winston, our golden, was young, I had to go out of town, and Amanda had a soccer tournament, and so I had a young, and I'm not saying young, old. I mean, it's really about paying attention. And she had said that she was going to spend the night, and she didn't. And I was, multiple states away. So that was aggravating. I've had, we have a lab that will eat anything. And same thing, left the doggy door closed. And Maddie got into the Easter baskets that I was going to send my niece and nephew. And I mean, it was the most, horrifying thing to come back to. So it is, I mean, you really have to find someone good, and to have a network of, like I ask a lot of my dog friends who they would recommend. And with Winston, he's a 1.5 golden. A lot of times I will go to our doggy daycare and have just Winston stay at doggy daycare, because during the day he's playing all day, and then at night he's there, and that's a lot safer than trying to have someone walk him and understand that he's still a big puppy. So I think it just depends on, like, for example, Oliver, our pug, he's never been in a kennel. Like, so he goes to either pug people or friends, because he just loves to snuggle. So it is an interesting dynamic on preparing your dog's personality, I think, too.
Absolutely. And there are some dogs that love going to a boarding kennel. Like you said, they love to play with the other dogs. They get their treats. They're comfortable where they're at. They have a low anxiety level. But I guess my specialty is working with dogs. Sorry about the bark there.
Oh, you're fine.
My specialty is working with animals that, I don't want to say are special needs, but they're special and they're needy.
Yeah, exactly. That is a needy.
And I find that animals, if you can keep them in their daily routine and disrupt their lives as little as possible while you're away, and they have their routines, they have less anxiety. It can even be a nice little staycation for them. A lot of times, to have a good pet sitter come to their home and follow their routines. They get their walks, they get their meals at the same time, they're sleeping in their same bed, they're at home and they know you're going to be returning there. So there's definitely a place to have the pet sitter that's going to come to your home and follow your routines to a T. But with that, like you said, it's a responsibility of knowing and trusting that this person is going to do the things you want them to do. And that's where I think like expectations come in. Like, are you going to have multiple pet sitters? And what is that communication and that role of each pet sitter? Are they going to meet each other? Are they going to hand the animals off? What condition are they going to leave your home in? Every pet sitter should offer a meet and greet for free even, and get that information to make sure that you guys are the right fit for each other, to meet the dog, to meet you. And if you have a request like, I need you to pick my pug up and let him drink from the sink after the walk, they should be like, okay, that's not that crazy. I understand that, and I'm down with that. And if they're not jumping on board right away, then maybe it's time to find somebody else that does understand that request is normal, right?
Right. Yeah, it is. It is making a list. And I mean, there are times when I go away and I feel like I write more for the dogs than I ever have for my children.
Yes, yes, that happens often.
Because I think I like my dogs better than my children.
Most people do. I find that a common thread.
That's so
No.
funny.
The pet sitting I do, and something that owners should be aware of when they're interviewing a pet sitter. Like my policy is I try to leave their home the same or better that I found it. And I think respect is very important. So the home should be clean and the pet sitter should leave it that way or leave it better than how they found it. Anything that is used, they should replace unless there's other direction given. They should have a form, like an intake form with questions. They should do a tour of the home. It should include things like where's the electrical panel and the water shutoff and the cleaning supplies and the trash. And does the trash need to go out on a certain day? So those are very important. They should ask for emergency contacts. They should ask if somebody has an extra key in the event of an emergency. Obviously, vet information. They need to understand the dog's behavior. If there's walks that are going to happen, what type of fence or what type of play that the dog is used to and that the owners want to happen. Any mail collection or plants watered. Anything quirky with the appliances or things in your home. And I definitely have had that where people are like, oh, don't use the oven. You know?
Oh, right.
What kind of communication do they want to happen while they're out of town? I'm a big fan of sending photos. I send tons and proof of life, right? I show them on their walk. I show them in their bed. I show them eating their dinner. And sometimes that's too much for people. So it's like, you don't have to reply back to any text I send. And if you want less, just tell me. And I've never had an owner say, send me less pictures of my dog. What type of access do they need to get into the house? Wi-Fi or TV usage? Here's kind of a weird one that I've been encountering a lot lately is camera usage. And I think cameras for security are awesome, especially for the front of your house or the back of your house. Cameras inside, because a lot of people will put up a camera to watch their dog if they go to work. And as a pet sitter, inside cameras are creepy. So
yeah, that is weird.
So that's a question that I always ask. Like, are there cameras in the home? And I need you to disable them for inside. Outside, obviously, keep them on. And the last thing is, it sounds strange to ask about, but it's not, because some dogs create a lot of waste. And it's asking about their pickup expectation, because not all pet sitters are paid to clean up your yard. And maybe they can clean up what the dog has created while they're there. But if you haven't given them a good start, or if it's been snowing, I think to have a plan, and depending on how big the yard is, or if you're walking them in the city and there's no yard, just to have that communication about what that looks like.
One good thing that I always do is I call the veterinarian and I let them know that I'm going away for, 2 days or a week. And if there's any type of issue, just to take the dog and I will pay for it when I get back. Just so
Awesome. That is a great
extra, stress isn't on the dog sitter when, Annie gets into a porcupine or, Oliver eats something and is sick, and it always happens when you're gone.
Of course. Well, that's why I ask about like the water shut off and the fire extinguisher. If I know about it and ask about it, nothing's going to happen. The day I don't ask about it, I'm going to be scrambling for the water shut off or something, So it's always good to have that extra information. That's a really good tip. I'm going to add that to my list. That's great.
Yeah.
Proprietary list that I email to every client. It's a fillable form. They fill it out. It comes directly to my inbox, and I have all that information that I could review with them when I meet them in person. And Polly, I think the last thing is just to agree on a rate, because a premium pet sitter is going to charge you more because they put in more of the time and they have advanced understanding of your animals and home care. And like we talked about earlier, it's also their real job, right? It's what they pay the bills with. And some situations could call for a higher fee. Like if somebody has a puppy, I definitely charge a higher puppy fee. If some people want 24/7 care for their pet instead of just an evening rate, that definitely is different pricing. But I'm also open to having the conversation with the person about maybe what those rates are and what we could compromise on. And paying promptly, pet sitters, any service person in the service industry appreciates getting paid promptly, as well as it's okay to tip. a lot of my clients, I think because they feel they're paying a premium pet sitting fee, some tip and some don't. And it is always appreciated. I think especially if you feel that your pet sitter has gone above and beyond, like they've watered your plants, or they've, picked your dog up from doggy daycare every single day, or they picked up all the poop in your yard and you had a bunch to start with and they did extra for that. I've even mowed somebody's yard before because they were gone for like 2 weeks, and their backyard got really long with grass and it was hard to find like where the poop was to clean it up. And I got them mower and I mowed their backyard. So I think that it's acknowledging when your service provider goes above and beyond and to reward that.
So what is the typical tip? Like 20% or 15 or, an extra 20, or what is the norm in dog sitting?
I kind of find an extra $20
okay,
based off of how long the stay was. If it was just a short weekend or a short stay, sometimes it's 20. If it was a longer pet sitting, sometimes it's 100. It just depends on what you're doing and what the person notices.
Okay.
I think just to ask, like if something gets damaged, what do you do if something's damaged? I think it's asking if the pet sitter has insurance and who's responsible, and being fair about what was damaged. Like if it's something your dog damaged because you have a puppy and they ate your couch, that's not your pet sitter's fault, right? You have a puppy. But if they had people over and they broke something, or they, ran over your mailbox, then that is their fault, right? So I think it's maybe just asking if they have insurance, or say, what are your policies on damage? Or I understand that my dog may cause damage. Like so many times when something has been damaged and I bring that to the owner's attention, they're like, oh yeah, they do that. They do that a lot. That's their thing. They chew that, or they, destroy that, or they knock that over, or, that's often the times. And then the last thing I think too is just respect. Your pet sitter is not a housekeeper necessarily. If you're gone for an extended period of time, I don't think it's fair for people to ask their pet sitter to clean their home, and they need to maybe plan to have a cleaner in place. And that's something a pet sitter should be asking, like, okay, I'm taking over after another pet sitter, and is there going to be a house cleaning between those 2 weeks where I'm taking over, where things have changed? Or, because a lot of times I've come into a situation where the house will be very filthy and I'm now having to clean it up because I'm going to be there for 2 weeks and I'm picking up after another pet sitter, or the people left it messy. And it's like, I think it's finding the right balance of caring for somebody's home, having the right communication, and having the respect for each other that the home and the pets will be cared for.
Yeah, that is a big thing, to make sure your house is clean. It's kind of like having a dinner party and make sure your dishwasher is empty. So,
right.
I think that's super important, because someone doesn't want to come into your pigsty,
Right. Right.
So if people are interested in a experienced pet sitter and they live in the Colorado area, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, Polly, that's a great question. I do high-end pet sitting, meaning that if your pet needs special care, more attention, and you need an adult that has experience in home and pet sitting, I still am taking on clients. And you can go to my website, naturalpetwellnessco.com. And I have a tab about pet sitting, and you could reach out and send me an email. We can talk about that and see if we're a good fit for caring for your pet.
Great. Well, thanks again for being on the podcast, and we look forward to having you back.
Well, thank you, and I hope that was helpful for everyone.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.